Okay, it looks like we're live. So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on this lovely, warm Friday. I'm currently chatting to Celine O'Donovan, author of Gifts from the Devastation, which is a really, I think, very powerful and beautiful account of Celine's journey with cancer and what it taught her. So, thank you very much, Celine, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Aisling. Delighted to be talking to you. It's great to get the opportunity. So, thanks
You're,
so much.
you're very welcome. So, I suppose we'll start from the beginning, really, and I suppose, how would you describe your spiritual path prior to getting cancer and then after the diagnosis? What changed for you? Can you just talk a little bit about your story?
Sure, sure. I suppose everything changed. That would probably sum it all up. But I suppose, yeah, prior to cancer, I'd say there was an aspect of me really all of my life, I feel, that was always searching for something more. I lived, quite a conventional life. I went to school, college, got a job, all those things, nothing wrong with them, but I always felt there was something missing. That's the only way I can put it. I suppose I wasn't really conscious of it at the time. And then I had a few difficult experiences back in my life, probably around, I had been married and my marriage broke down and I went into a very low period. So I struggled for quite a few years. So I suppose a few rock bottoms probably spurred me on to say, okay, I need to sort of look at how I'm living and I need to get help, I need to get support. And I'd always been interested in a very holistic way of living. So I trained in things like Reiki and sound healing. So I sort of had two lives on the go. It sort of felt like I had my career and my work, and I worked in marketing, which I loved for many years. And then I was doing all of this work as well. So I sort of feel in that period something did awaken in me, that there is more going on. I always had a very I just feel now I had quite a strong intuitive knowing all my life, but I didn't trust it. Because our world doesn't really sort of encourage us to go there. So I probably suppressed that side of myself, but I always knew mind, body, spirit, everything is connected. I really sensed that. Um, so I'd been on that journey, and I think it was a gradual journey. And when cancer hit, really, it the ground had been laid, and I was ready because I'd been very burnt out prior to cancer. So even though I had, I suppose, improved or worked on lots of aspects of my life, I was still in that running from myself, running to keep up, afraid to stop, probably suppressing. I probably hadn't dealt with a lot of what I'd experienced. I'd got a lot of help, but I still suppressed a lot. So when cancer came, really, it felt for me, and I've said it to so many people, once the shock diagnosis, like, because cancer hasn't, thank God, been in my family. It was just so shocking and such a devastation. But literally, once I got over that, I just felt relief. I can remember going, oh my God, I can actually stop. I remember sitting in a waiting room in the hospital one day going, nobody wants anything. And I needed, personally for me, I needed something as big as that, because I had had a car accident 2 years prior, and that had stopped me for a month. It was like a little mini breakdown. I just physically, mentally, very, very difficult. But it didn't do enough. I was back into my job and struggling really to figure how I know I need to do something. I know there's more to life. So I suppose in terms of the spiritual journey of cancer, I would say the biggest shift then was realizing that the power that I knew was there, and this power of creation, I call it. It's not outside me. It suddenly began to make sense that, no, this is in me. This isn't anything outside of me. And that was the biggest shift, coming to that place of knowing I'm an aspect of creation. I'm a spark. I love that sort of description, like a star. We all are, and it's in us, and we are powerful, and we're creators, and we're here to remember that. I think we're all here to remember that, and then to express. And life will give us, like it did me often, you know yourself, it gives you difficult and challenging times, because if we're too comfortable and we're going along, there isn't the, I suppose, that urge there for us to explore. And just one lovely thing I read the other day, I thought it was a nice definition or description of the difference between religion and spirituality, because many of us in Ireland grew up within a religion, and I'm not religious. I grew up Catholic, but it was lovely. It says religion is when we believe in hell, and spirituality is when we've been there, or we find. And I said I can identify with that. Mentally, emotionally. So yeah, it's been a magical journey, really.
Mm. I think that's a very apt descriptor of like I've spoken to people who have been diagnosed with cancer, and I've had that in my family, and they do describe this almost dark night of the soul experience you go through, because when you get cancer, even if it's not particularly serious form, even if you're told it's treatable, it'll be fine, there still is that aspect of having to reckon with your own mortality, perhaps for the first
Yeah.
time. And so that always is a very difficult experience to pass through. What would you say to anyone who might be struggling with that right now, even, you know, if,
Going through cancer, is it? Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
cancer, having that dark night of the soul experience and wondering how they're going to come through the other side? Do you have any, I guess, tips for people? Or?
yeah, yeah, and I suppose I don't like to be prescriptive, as I suppose we all know, we all have a very unique personal journey. And even in the title of the book, I was very conscious of that, because I'm not saying I still struggle with many things in my life now. It's not saying I have it all sorted. And, it's never to diminish the devastations people go through, because they are horrendous when you're in them. I suppose I would say that, if you can, it can find it, that usually I think it's they say the wound is where the light gets in. I think that's a saying by Rumi, or Leonard Cohen, I think, took it. But you know where I have sort of got, and that's a lot of what the book about, is sort of trying to reframe things that are happening um in your life. And if you're in a very low place, I mean, you have to be there and go through it, I suppose, is the first thing. um Surrendering it to it in one way, and knowing that this can be the start of something good. Our breakdowns are our breakthroughs. It's very cliched, I know, but um, all I can say is that every down, really low period I had in my life was always the start of something new, always. And I was lucky to have a few good people in my life who told me that. So for anyone who is in that place, I mean, I think it's really important as well, is that you find good people and good support, whether it's professional, it's family, it's, people who get you and understand you, someone who you can just be yourself with. But it's very, very hard to do it on your own. So all I can say is that, and that's sort of the journey in the book. I hope that that's, if people read it, they will see that, because I take people really from my own personal story, my own personal journey of, an everyday person, and the challenges I went through, and sort of, the tools and the solutions and the insights that gave me, um, to be able to I suppose, grow and live life in a way that now is works really well for me. So I think that's there for everyone. That difficult times come to us to help us grow. I suppose that is the message. But you have to honor where you are, um, and you are not alone. For anyone who's going through something very difficult, as much as it might feel like that, and to be kind and to honor it. I said that already, I know, but a big part of what I used to do in life, and I think I did for many years, was I suppressed how I felt. And we're sort of taught, keep going, put a brave face on, get on with it. And I did that for years until I was burnt out. So we can't run from it. So we just, to be gentle, to be kind to yourself, to allow yourself feel whatever it is that comes up. I still do that if I need to go out someday in the car and roar or cry or scream. When you think of when we let this stuff out, what is it doing inside if we don't? It's, that's what cancer is. I really believe that it's a suppression. When it starts eating away, we're suppressing who we really are. And the opposite is we're creators, and we're creative beings. And if we're not honoring that, It's we're not honoring our true nature. Um,
I, I really love what you said about people seeking out a support network and surrounding themselves with friends and family and loved ones who will have compassion for what they're going through, because it makes me think of, I've heard it said that the difference between illness and wellness is I and we, and I think that that phrase came to mind to me for me when you said that.
yeah,
This
yeah,
idea that healing is best done as part of the community,
yes,
having the
yeah,
opportunity to share what you're going through, even can be incredibly cathartic and healing for people.
absolutely. Just to be, isn't it? We all just want to be accepted for who we are, and just that it's okay. We don't have to be these perfect, whatever perfect is, specimens of humans. A big step for me in that is being able to be more vulnerable with people now than I used to. I think that's why a lot of people, I think the perception maybe many people had of me is that I was a very sort of relaxed life is, all very smooth and I'm coping with everything. But like inside, I was literally like, is it the duck and the legs paddling just to keep that facade, It was like being an actor and not playing a part that was very nice. I mean, we're all actors really, but so being able to let that down, and as you said, exactly, when you find the right people. I mean, I had never written anything, and I wrote another book before this book, called the Tapestry of Life, and it's very interesting because I was just thinking about it this morning. It's really about the power of community. So I often wondered, why did you write that before this book? And I needed time before I could sort of process my own experience, but also was I really needed to understand the power of community. That, if we are all, and we all are, I believe, sparks of this creative force, God, power, divine, whatever you want to call it, um, we're all aspects of it. So we all need each other to help us fulfill whatever we're meant to do here. We're all pieces of the pie, or whatever you want to call it, pieces of the puzzle. That's how I see it. So it just showed me I wouldn't be doing anything I'm doing now only for the people that have come into my life. I mean, and I didn't have to search them out necessarily. I mean, I did make a conscious decision, I need to be around people who get me and understand me, and, who bring you higher, and we all bring each other higher, hopefully. So yeah, community, like you said, it is. I can remember even many times during treatment just going up to Cancer Care West in Galway, and the value of that was just sitting, not having to talk at all about what you were going through, because we all just knew, we wouldn't be there otherwise. So there was a wonderful feeling of connection, community. We didn't need to know each other's individual stories. We just about knew each other's names, but you really felt seen and heard and okay and accepted, nothing more powerful, I don't believe.
I wasn't actually aware that you had written another book before From The Devastation, so that's interesting to know. Because my next question was going to be just what inspired you to start writing through this experience, and when did the idea of creating this from the devastation?
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm going, oh my God, was that a good idea? Try to get a lot into. Yeah, well, I suppose I wouldn't have ever called myself a writer. I worked in marketing. That was my job and career for many years, 25 years. So there was an element of writing in it, but it wasn't anything personal. um, I suppose again, where I'm very grateful for cancer was that in the transition, and I've talked to a lot of women and people about this, is not going through the treatment isn't often the most difficult, because you're sort of held by the system, whatever you think of the system. But if you go into the system, you're sort of there going from appointment to appointment to appointment. But then you're sort of, no disrespect, but you are spat out the other end, and you're sort of left to find your way. And I found that transition hugely difficult. I suffered from a lot of fatigue. I knew I couldn't go back to my old life. Like, this had been something major. This just wasn't something small. This was a major life shift. So I was very lucky. A friend recommended, I ended up doing a course called The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book by Julia Cameron.
yes, that's an amazing book.
Yeah. And exploring your creativity and through spirituality. And beautiful group of women, and it was the woman who was facilitating it, a woman called Margie Conley, who probably over the course of the weeks we were meeting had heard me talk about, what I was learning from the experience. And she just happened to say to me one day, would you think of writing something down or just maybe getting it out in some way? And I said, oh, I don't know. But I left her house and I did take out my laptop that afternoon, and I spent the next 6 months just writing. Um, and it was funny. It's sort of, there was no, the way I look at it now, there was no mental effort. I really feel like it was channeled or downloaded. It might sound strange to some people, but it literally just came to me in chapters, and it just, so it was very cathartic apart from anything else. I didn't intend it to be a book. It was just, okay, maybe this is something good I need to do. But when it did look to be turning into a book, I found a publisher in Galway and I spoke to them, and they were very encouraging. It's a self-publishing house called Tribes Press, and Marguerite Tonery owns it. She was very encouraging about my writing, which I needed, because I'd have given up. I had no confidence at all in it. But she suggested I look at writing fiction. So this was where the first book came about. I hadn't intended to go there. And it's only now I see why that happened, if entrusting the way life unfolds. So I left her house and the company, and as I was walking away or driving away, I started to hear all these voices. It was funny. And I basically ended up saying, okay, I'll give this a go. And so that was the story that ended up being about what I call the power of community. But it's fiction, even though I don't think anything really is fiction. It's all based on your own experience in your own life. But it's a story based in Galway City about three different women and how they come into each other's lives, very unlikely friends or, people who you might expect to come together, and how through that they really change each other. And that's why I called it the tapestry. And I realize now I wrote what I needed to learn, because I needed to learn that. I had been a very much survivor in my life. I can do everything on my own. That's how I had to some of the time do it. So and I think also what happened as well is it gave me a break from my own experience. So I had a few years I had written. And I'm very grateful that during lockdown all of last year, then I was able to come back and finish with a few years behind me. It wasn't as raw, the experience. I'm sure if I sat down again today, I'd have learned more, but that was the way it unfolded. It's amazing. And I managed to get a publisher, a publisher in the UK for it. So yeah, it's been a great journey. So it was, sorry, just even saying that, when you give that bit of space, when I stopped, if I had been able to rush back into work, which would have been my old pattern, I never would have had the space to allow something else to come through, which was the writing wanted to come through. I had felt I was suppressing a big part of myself for many years before that, but I just didn't know, So sometimes it does require a surrendering completely and stopping. But yeah.
So I believe the book is available via pre-order at the moment. Is that right? Or have you
It's
got it?
available to pre-order. Yeah, there is a bit of a lead time in with the publishers. That's just the way they do it. The actual public, it's available to pre-order through my website, and there's a number of links there through the publishing company. So depending on who you want to pre-order from, the actual physical book won't be available till next March, which I know seems a long time away, but that is just the process of going through it, the publishing process. But, if anyone wants, I also, just to mention, which sort of feeds into the book, I trained as a life coach as well during that period. Um, so I think in the book, it's very practical as well, because it's broken, just to explain, it's broken into three sections or three parts. The first is what I call healing. So it's like my personal story and the healing that, took place in my life. Then it's sort of transformation. So how did I integrate a lot of these things, and how do I still do that every day? And then the third part is co-creation. So it's sort of when you sort of come to know who you truly are and the power that you have, how do you go about creating your life? And I suppose for what I feel I have done is I've married sort of the skills of being a life coach with my personal experience. So it's quite unique. It's not in the tradition, it's a very sort of intuitive type of coaching is how I like to see it that we, we tune in, we tap into that higher part of ourselves, and then from there, we look at what we're doing in our lives and seeing, is that supporting, where we want to. But it's coming from a higher place as opposed to a very ego. Nothing wrong with if you're making plans in that way, but it's not the way I work. It's not what's worked for me. So it is that shift, isn't it? And I think we're going through it on the planet now, that shift from the head to the heart, or joining the two up.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's proving to be a complicated process, I guess, because so long occupied in the headspace and thinking this is the best thing to do, this is the only way, that actually considering other ideas or ways we could go about things in society is a big ask for a lot of people.
It is. And, and I sort of feel it's like cancer. I don't know that I would have got through. I think sometimes we have to, as you talked about the dark night of the soul, I think as a collective, we are going through that. And it's horrendous when you're in it. And, but the only thing that gives me solace is that knowing, and I do know it, there's always light at the end of that. Now, we obviously have to, I think it's a time for a great awakening on the planet. We're all being, and that can be something beautiful if when we realize it, that as tough as this is, there's a magical, if you think of everybody or a lot of people waking up to that realization about who they are and who we all are. I mean, an amazing world to live in, won't it?
So
We
thank you.
live in hope.
Yes, live in hope always. So thank you so much, Celine, for joining us today.
Thank
And
you.
people watching, you can learn more about Celine's work and her book by going to her website, which is celineodonovan.com. Is that
That's it. That's it. And I've an email link there as well. If anyone wants to make contact with me, I'll be just one small thing to say in the lead up to it being published. I'll be looking for a few people. I'd love the input of a few people to read it and maybe review and give me their feedback on it. So if anybody is interested in doing that, I'd be very happy to link in with them. And I'd be delighted to get their feedback and input and see if it's helped them.
okay?
So
Thank you so much, Celine. Thank you for
thank
being
you.
here and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks so much, Ashley. Thank you, everyone.